This is Don Cash, a beloved billionaire, celebrated for his generosity and praised by everyone who crossed his path. He built houses for widows, paid school fees for the poor, and became a national hero. But what the world didn't know was this. Behind the wealth was a dark, deadly secret. Don Cash had a covenant with evil. He lured innocent girls and sacrificed them, all for more riches. Now he's been given his most dangerous mission yet. Turn a virgin homeless girl into a tuber of yam for ultimate power. But this time, will he succeed, or will the truth finally catch up with him? This is a story of deception, justice, and the power of an innocent voice. So sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because what you're about to watch will shock you. And if you're just joining us, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. In the heart of Lagos, where the rich flaunted their wealth and the poor dreamed of crumbs, one man stood above them all, Don Cash. He was not just rich, he was legendary. His mansions stretched from Banana Island to Victoria Garden City. His exotic cars paraded the streets like royalty. On social media, he was a god. Men envied him, women idolized him, children waved at his convoy like he was president. People called him the man with the golden hand, because anything he touched turned to gold. He donated to orphanages. He paid hospital bills. He sponsored widows. He built schools and villages. To the world, he was the kind of man every mother prayed for as a son-in-law. But behind that generous smile and diamond-studded wristwatch was a monster. Not even his wife knew the truth. In their 12-bedroom mansion was a room sealed with 3 layers of iron. No one was allowed inside. Not staff, not security, not even his wife. "It's sacred," he'd say, kissing her forehead. "Only I must enter." And she obeyed. Why wouldn't she? He bought her cars, jewelry, took her to Dubai every 3 months. Who questions a man who gives them everything? But what no one knew was Don Cash was not just wealthy, he was bound to the underworld. Every year, he sacrificed young women to a mermaid queen who lived in a spiritual realm accessed only through that room. He'd lure the girls, naive, desperate, often homeless or jobless, with promises of fame, gifts, scholarships. Then kill them in the dead of night and dump their bodies along lonely roads. And he did it so cleanly, no one ever suspected him. No CCTV ever caught him. No fingerprints, no trails. Over time, rumors spread about missing girls, mostly age 18 to 30, often found with body parts missing. People suspected cultists. Some blamed Yahoo boys, but not Don Cash. He was too clean, too powerful, too generous. Nobody thought the hero was the villain. It was midnight in Lagos. While the city buzzed with nightlife somewhere in the heart of Ikoyi, the real night was just beginning. Inside the grand estate of Don Cash, all the lights were off, except one. A dull blue glow leaked out from the cracks beneath a heavy black door at the end of the east wing. This door was different. It had no handle, no visible lock. Only Don Cash could open it, and only with a strange ring he wore on his left index finger. Everyone in the house knew the rule: do not go near the last door. The security guards avoided that corridor. The maids pretended it didn't exist. Even his wife, Anita, a woman who had survived Don Cash's temper more than once, never dared question it. He told her the room was his prayer sanctuary, but inside no prayers were made to God. Don Cash pressed the ring against the door, and a slow humming began. The metal creaked, then slid open like a vault. He stepped into the room barefoot, dressed in nothing but a red wrapper tied at the waist. His body glistened with palm oil. On his chest were chalk markings drawn in strange symbols. The room was dark, except for the flickering flames of 7 black candles. At the center was a wide basin filled with water, floating herbs, and a carved idol with eyes that glowed. He knelt. Then he spoke in a language no human should know. "Great Queen of the River, I come again." For a moment, silence. Then the water in the basin began to bubble. The herbs twisted. The glow in the idol's eyes intensified. And then her voice. "Don Cash, my loyal servant." It echoed deep and feminine, as though it came from underwater. He bowed. I have obeyed your last instructions. 4 maidens in 4 months. I seek greater wealth, greater power. My enemies are growing. I must stay above them. The voice laughed. You are hungry, as always. I am ready to give more, he said. Then listen carefully, the voice whispered. The basin swirled violently. A silver mist rose, and inside it appeared the shape of a mermaid, her skin shimmering, her eyes pitch black, and her long, wet hair flowing like seaweed. I will open the doors of global riches. Fame will bow before you. Politicians will beg for your favor. But this time, I demand something special. Don Cash leaned closer. Command me, my queen. I want, she hissed, a pure one, a virgin, a girl untouched by man, but not just that. She must be homeless, innocent, with a heart that still believes in kindness. That is the soul I want. Don Cash's throat tightened. A girl like that, she continued, is rare. But if you find her, your name will be written in fire. Even kings will fear you. The mist vanished, the basin calmed, the candles dimmed, then the voice returned once more. And Don Cash, use the ring I gave you. Touch her forehead. She will turn into yam. Bring the yam to me, and do not let anyone hear her voice. For if she speaks, my spell will break. Then all fell silent. Don Cash sat back, breathing hard. A virgin girl, homeless, innocent. He rose to his feet, wiped the sweat from his brow, and left the room. As he walked back to his bedroom, he passed a large mirror in the hallway. For a second, just 1 second, his reflection flickered. His face was not his. It was hollow, gray, evil. But he blinked, and it was gone. Back in the bedroom, his wife stirred on the bed. Where did you go? She mumbled, half asleep. He smiled, just praying for our family. She turned and drifted back into sleep. But Don Cash didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the moonlight creeping through the curtains, already plotting how to find the girl who would become his final sacrifice. And somewhere far from that mansion, under a broken street lamp near Ojuelegba Bridge, a young girl named Joy huddled beneath cardboard sheets, clutching her torn schoolbook to her chest. She had no idea that someone was watching her, that someone had already chosen her. The next morning, Don Cash sat alone on his private balcony, sipping a glass of Zobo and staring into nothingness. His mansion overlooked the ocean, yet the waves didn't calm him as they once did. His mind was elsewhere, haunted by the Queen Mother's final words. A virgin, homeless, innocent, one who still believes in kindness. He had sacrificed before, dozens, but this was different. Not because of morality, Don Cash buried that long ago, but because purity was hard to find. In a world where desperation drove many young girls to sell their bodies for survival, finding one who was untouched and still trusted strangers was like finding gold in dust. But Don Cash never failed a mission. He didn't rise from a broke orphan to Nigeria's most envied billionaire by being soft. He was relentless. He picked up his phone and dialed a private number. The voice on the other end answered instantly. Yes, sir. I want a list, Don Cash said coldly. Young girls in Lagos aged between 14 and 19. Orphans, street girls, ones who haven't been corrupted. The voice hesitated. That may take time, sir. Verification of, I said I want it by nightfall. I'm not asking. Understood. He hung up. Downstairs, his wife Anita was organizing a charity gala, an event they hosted every year for the elite and press. It was her way of playing First Lady in a kingdom she never ruled. I'll be heading to the mainland later today, Don Cash announced as he walked past her. She looked up. For what? To see a real estate project in Surulere. She raised an eyebrow. I thought your boys handled that. Don Cash didn't even stop walking. This one needs my presence. She sighed and returned to her guest list, unaware that her husband was planning a ritual hunt. Later that day, Don Cash drove himself, an unusual move. He wore simple clothes, a faded shirt, old jeans, slippers, no Rolex, no rings, no designer glasses. He couldn't risk being recognized. He parked near Ojuelegba Bridge, an area crawling with homeless youth, beggars, and street hawkers. From his tinted windows, he watched them. Some smoked, some begged, some slept in his drainages. Then he saw her. A girl. She was sitting alone beside a rusted container, her head buried in an old book. Her hair was rough, but her face delicate, untouched. Her eyes moved as she read, lips forming silent words. Next to her was a small, waterproof bag, her only possession. She couldn't have been more than 16. Don Cash's heart skipped. He stared harder. She wasn't like the others. She didn't beg. She wasn't dirty. She looked lost, but not broken. He stepped out of his car and approached her slowly. "Hello, little one," he said gently. She looked up, startled but polite. "Good evening, sir. What are you doing here all by yourself?" She hesitated, then said, "I'm just reading." "In the street?" "My parents died in an accident last year. I've been on the street since then. I used to go to school, but there's no one to help me now." Her voice was soft, clear. Her innocence rang louder than the traffic around them. Don Cash smiled warmly. "What's your name?" "Joy?" "Beautiful name. You remind me of my daughter. God rest her soul." "I'm sorry for your loss, sir." He nodded solemnly. "Listen, Joy, would you like to go to school again? Eat real food? Sleep in a real bed?" Her eyes widened. "Yes, sir. More than anything." "Then come with me. I'll help you." Joy hesitated. Her eyes darted to his car. "Are you sure I can trust you?" He knelt slightly and placed his hand on her shoulder. "I help many girls like you. You can ask around. I even built a home for widows in Ikorodu. I'm a businessman, not a monster." The word monster sat cold in his own throat, but she didn't notice. She smiled and nodded. "Okay, I'll come with you." As they walked to the car, Don Cash's hand gripped the magical ring in his pocket, the same ring the Queen Mother had enchanted, the instrument of transformation. He could already see it, the ritual, the wealth, the power. He smiled, but above them the sky darkened unexpectedly, though the weather forecast had promised sunshine. A single bolt of lightning cracked silently across the sky, and somewhere deep in the spiritual realm, the Queen Mother was watching, waiting. Joy had not sat in a car for over a year. As she slipped into the front seat of Don Cash's black SUV, she sank into the soft leather as if entering a dream. The scent of vanilla and wealth filled her nose. The car was spotless, the dashboard gleamed, and she could hardly believe this was happening. "Put on your seatbelt," Don Cash said kindly, flashing a warm smile. "Safety first." She obeyed, still a bit nervous. "I'm taking you to my house for now. You'll rest, eat, and tomorrow we'll get you cleaned up and enrolled into school," he said, starting the car. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice shaky. "I've prayed for this for months." Don Cash smiled, but his eyes were cold behind his sunglasses. Joy sat quietly, holding her tattered schoolbook close to her chest like a shield. She had kept that book with her through rain and sun, believing one day, just maybe, she would read it again in a classroom. "Where are we going, sir?" she asked after a while, the streets growing quieter as they left the hustle of the city behind. "Somewhere peaceful," he replied, "a place where no one will disturb you." Joy smiled. "God bless you, sir. You're a good man." Don Cash's jaw tightened. The words scratched at his soul like guilt, but he shrugged them off. He had done this before, many times, but why did this one feel different? They entered a long, lonely road bordered by thick trees. Joy turned and looked out the window. "It's quiet here." "It is," he agreed. "Peaceful, just like you need." He slowed the car and turned into a hidden path. It was narrow, almost like a trail for bicycles, but he knew it well. It led to an abandoned clearing he'd used once before. A perfect place. He parked. The air was still. "Come," he said. Joy got out of the car, her sandals crunching on dry leaves. "Is this the house?" "No," he said slowly, reaching into his pocket for the ring. "I just want to show you something." Joy looked around. The trees rustled gently. A flock of birds took off from a nearby branch. Something about the air felt strange. She turned to him. "Sir?" Don Cash didn't answer. His face was blank. The warmth was gone. He stepped forward and touched her forehead with the enchanted ring. A flash of blue light burst from the ring and struck Joy's skin. She gasped. Her body stiffened, her limbs froze, her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then, puff, in an instant, she was gone. In her place, a large smooth tuber of yam sat on the ground. Don Cash exhaled slowly. It had worked. The Queen Mother's instructions were precise, and once again, her power delivered. He picked up the yam and placed it carefully in a black cloth bag, tying it shut like treasure. As he turned to return to his car, something strange happened. The engine wouldn't start. He tried again. Nothing. He swore under his breath. He had used this car for years, never had a problem. He stepped out, opened the bonnet, checked everything he could. Still nothing. Frustrated, he pulled out his phone and called for a taxi. Within 20 minutes, a Toyota Corolla pulled into the clearing. The driver was a middle-aged man with tribal marks on his cheeks and suspicion in his eyes. "Where you dey go, Olga?" "Mainland," Don Cash replied, carrying the black bag and sliding into the back seat. "And I'll pay you double." "No wahala," the driver said and drove off. As they made their way back toward the city, the atmosphere shifted. It started with a whisper. "Help!" The driver glanced in the rearview mirror. "Did you say something, sir?" "No," Don Cash replied, slightly startled. "Why?" "I swear say I hear small, pike-in voice say help, oh." Don Cash frowned. "You're imagining things. Just drive." "Okay." Silence again. Then clearer this time. "Please help me." The driver slammed the brakes. "Olga, you hear that one?" Don Cash's face turned pale. "You'll get 5,000. Just shut up and drive." The driver hesitated. 5,000 was a lot, but something about this didn't feel right. They continued in silence until they reached a police checkpoint at Berger. Two officers with rifles waved them down. "Una, good evening," and the driver greeted. "Where Una dey go?" "Mainland, officer, just dropping Olga." As they were about to let them pass, the yam cried again, louder this time. "Please help me. Don't let him kill me." The officers froze. The driver's hands shook. One officer stepped back, stunned. "Wait, no, who talked that thing?" The yam screamed again from the bag. "It's me. I'm not a yam. He turned me into this. Please help." "Waitin' day inside that bag?" the other officer barked, raising his gun. Don Cash's face drained of color. It's just food. I'm a farmer. I grow exotic yam. Shut up!" The officers yanked open the back door and dragged the bag out. It thumped to the ground. The yam continued crying, a girl's voice raw with pain. Everyone stared in horror. The crowd began to gather. Then Don Cash did the unthinkable. He fell to his knees and began to beg. "I'll give you money, any amount. Let me go and I'll make you all rich. 10 million naira each." But the officers weren't listening anymore. One turned to the other. "Call headquarters. This one past checkpoint matter." The other nodded and stepped away to make the call. Don Cash looked around. His ring was still on his finger, but something had changed. The power, the control, it was slipping. He clenched his fists. "You were warned," the Queen Mother's voice whispered in his head. She must not speak. And now she had. The police officers stood frozen, staring at the yam on the roadside, which, by now, was crying like a little girl in pain. "Please, someone help me. I'm not a yam. I'm a human being." People began to gather. First a few, then dozens. Market women, Okada riders, Danfo drivers, beggars. Everyone stopped to witness what they couldn't explain. The yam was moving. Not rolling. Moving. It shook slightly on the dusty road, as if breathing. A woman in the crowd screamed, "Blood of Jesus!" One officer leaned down slowly, his hand trembling. He reached toward the yam. Suddenly, the yam wailed again, this time louder, clearer. "He's the one! He did this to me!" The officer jumped back. "Woo!" The taxi driver, now standing beside the police vehicle, whispered, "I tell Una, I hear from inside the car. I swear, say I hear her voice since we come out." Don Cash stood near the open door of the taxi, sweating bullets. His once neat shirt clung to his back, soaked with fear. His lips trembled, but he forced a fake smile. "Gentlemen, this is All a misunderstanding. It's a voice prank. It's technology. I'm a businessman. I do pranks on TikTok sometimes, I swear. It's a recording. Recording, ka? One of the officers snapped. Inside Yam? Another officer hissed. You they mad? Bring the bag, the senior officer shouted. Let's take everything to the station. Don Cash raised his hands, his voice now shaking. Wait, officers, I can make this go away. Let me give you something. Just between us. He dipped into his pocket and pulled out a fat envelope stuffed with Naira notes. 5 million Naira, he said. It's yours. No one needs to know what happened here. A silence fell. Even the Yam stopped crying. Then, slap, the senior officer knocked the envelope out of his hand. So you think say everybody get price? You no go make heaven. Don Cash staggered, humiliated. The junior officer handcuffed him on the spot. You're under arrest for suspicion of murder, kidnapping, and use of black magic. You have the right to remain silent. Don Cash tried to protest. I didn't kill anyone. There's no body. The Yam cried again. He turned me into this. His name is Don Cash. He promised to help me. The crowd gasped. A young man pulled out his phone and began to record. Another followed. In seconds, the scene went viral. Crying Yam # Don Cash. Arrested mask Yam with a voice. At the police station, a crowd had already formed. News spread like wildfire. Reporters shoved their cameras through the gate. Some officers tried to control the crowd, but they kept chanting, Bring out the Yam. Let the Yam talk. Where is the girl? Inside, the commissioner of police stared at the tuber of Yam lying in the evidence room, still weeping softly. Get me the inspector general on the phone, he ordered. This is not ordinary. This is spiritual. Meanwhile, Don Cash sat in the interrogation room, his head lowered, his hands cuffed to the steel table. He'd made 100 offers already, to the DPO, to the arresting officers, even to the janitor. Money, properties, cars. But no one took it. The spell was broken. The fear people once had for him had dissolved in the face of the supernatural. People weren't just angry, they were terrified. A billionaire famous for helping the poor, turning girls into Yam. And not just that, the Yam spoke. It cried. It called names. It pleaded for justice. This was no longer a crime story, it was a national horror. Back in the evidence room, the Yam kept sobbing. A female officer, Sergeant Chioma, watched in disbelief. She moved closer, heart pounding. Can you hear me? Yes, the Yam answered faintly. What's your name? Joy. My name is Joy. The sergeant took a shaky breath. How old are you, Joy? 16. Tears welled up in Chioma's eyes. Who did this to you? Don Cash. He found me under Ohualegba Bridge. He said he'd help me. He touched my forehead with a ring. Then everything went dark. Chioma stepped back. Her legs felt weak. She turned to her superior, who had just walked in. Sir, she whispered, voice cracking. This girl is real. The officer nodded grimly. We've called a spiritual advisor. He's on his way. Outside the station, the crowd had grown into hundreds. Protesters were holding signs. Justice for Jick. End ritual killings. Expose the rich. Don Cash sat in his cell shaking, his fine clothes now crumpled and stained. The ring, the very object of his power, had been confiscated. He looked at his palms and muttered, How did this happen? How did I lose control? But deep in the shadows of his broken thoughts, he heard her voice again. Not Joy, the Queen Mother. You failed me. His eyes widened. You let her speak. You let them hear. You have dishonored our covenant. No, he whispered. No, I did everything. I gave you blood. I gave you youth. You will be forgotten. Then, silence. Don Cash screamed, punching the wall with his cuffed hands. But no one came to help him. He was no longer a hum. He was a prisoner. And somewhere on a shelf in the evidence room, a Yam continued to cry, waiting for justice. Inside the police station, the walls felt colder than usual. But it wasn't just the AC humming. It was the weight of something unnatural hanging in the air. Down in the secured evidence room, the Yam had not stopped crying. Help me, please. I just want to go home. The voice was soft now, exhausted, but still unmistakably human. Sergeant Kioma sat beside the table trembling. She had served for 12 years and seen all kinds of cases, murder, fraud, cult killings, but nothing like this. A tuber of yam with a child's voice? A crying yam naming her abuser? This wasn't a police case, this was spiritual warfare. By noon, the commissioner of police, top-ranking officers, and a government-assigned prophet stood in the same room, watching the yam on a velvet cloth. The prophet, an old man with a white beard clad in flowing white, lifted his staff. This child has been spiritually bound, he declared, through dark marine rituals. If you delay further, her soul may be lost forever. The commissioner nodded. Can she be restored? Yes, but the ring must touch her again. The very one used to transform her. The ring must reverse the curse. The room fell silent. One officer cleared his throat. Sir, we have the ring. It was seized during arrest. Good, the prophet said. Then bring the man who wore it. Bring Don Cash. In the holding cell, Don Cash was not the same man the world had celebrated. His face was pale, his lips dry. His voice cracked when he spoke. The weight of national disgrace had begun to break him. He had tried calling his lawyer, his political friends, even the governor he once bribed, but no one answered. He had become radioactive. No one wanted to be associated with him. So when the door to his cell creaked open and 4 armed men walked in, he didn't resist. He didn't speak. He only lowered his head. They led him to the evidence room where the prophet waited beside the still weeping yam. Cameramen had arrived. The Minister of Women Affairs was there too, and a small crowd of media personnel huddled behind the glass. This was no longer a case. It was a national broadcast. Don Cash, the prophet said, touch the yam with the same ring you used. Don Cash looked up slowly. His eyes met the yam. The crying, the guilt gripped his throat. I can't. The commissioner stepped forward. If you refuse, you'll be charged for murder, child trafficking, and occultism. You'll never see daylight again. Don Cash closed his eyes. He reached into the evidence tray. His hand trembled as he picked up the ring. It was cold, colder than it had ever been. He looked at it like it was a snake ready to bite him. Then he stepped forward and placed the ring gently on the top of the yam. A flash of blue light burst. Everyone gasped. The yam began to spin. A strong wind blew through the room, scattering files and chairs. The prophet held his staff. The lights flickered. The ground shook faintly. Then, silence. When the light faded, Joy lay on the table, unconscious but breathing. Human again. She looked fragile, her clothes still the same. The red blouse and blue skirt she wore the day Don Cash picked her up. Gasps filled the room. Cameras flashed. A reporter screamed, "She's alive!" Another burst into tears. Even the police officers stood frozen. Sergeant Kioma covered her mouth, sobbing. The minister stepped forward and gently held Joy's hand. She's just a child. Joy's eyes fluttered open. She looked around, confused. Then her voice cracked. Where am I? You're safe now, Kioma whispered. You're free. Then she saw him, Don Cash. Joy recoiled instantly. Her body shook in terror. Him! That's him! He promised to help me! He turned me into yam! Her voice echoed like thunder. The officers grabbed Don Cash before he could move. But he didn't run. He didn't fight. Instead, he collapsed to the floor wailing. I didn't want to do it, he cried. They promised me power. The Queen Mother. She said I'd be famous forever. I had to do it. I had no choice. The prophet pointed his staff. You had a choice. You chose blood over mercy, greed over grace. Don Cash beat the floor with his fists. I gave money to the poor. I built orphanages. I did good things. You used good to hide your evil, the commissioner said sharply. Your time is up. Joy stared at him, tears sliding down her cheeks. You could have saved me, and you turned me into a vegetable. Reporters captured every word. Within minutes, every news channel, blog, and social media platform was flooded with images. Billionaire Don Cash confesses to ritual killing. Homeless girl turned to yam, now rescued. Nigeria in shock. As Don Cash breaks down during confession. Across the nation, outrage exploded. Protests began outside police headquarters. Youth groups demanded justice for other missing girls. Parents cried for their daughters who never came home. Every journalist in Lagos wanted an exclusive. And in the center of it all, Joy, the girl who once lived under a bridge, now stood as the symbol of survival and justice. Joy sat quietly on the hospital bed, wrapped in a soft blanket, her eyes scanning the white walls as if still unsure whether this was reality or another dream. It had been only 48 hours since she was turned back from yam to human, but to Joy it felt like weeks. Everything had changed. She was no longer the invisible girl sleeping under a bridge. She was no longer a whisper in the crowd. She was now Nigeria's most famous survivor. Nurses peeked through the glass window just to see her. Journalists camped outside the hospital gates. The world wanted to hear her speak. But Joy just wanted peace. Her hands trembled when she lifted a cup of water. Her sleep was shallow. The image of Don Cash's face, the moment before he used the ring, still haunted her. But she was alive, and that alone was a miracle. A knock came at the door. A gentle voice followed. "Joy, can we come in?" Joy turned. Sergeant Kioma stepped in with a woman dressed in royal blue lace. She was elegant, warm, and radiant with kindness. "Joy, this is Mrs. Evelyn Bello, the First Lady of Lagos State," Kioma said softly. "She's been following your story closely." Joy sat up quickly. "Good afternoon, Ma." Mrs. Bello smiled and came closer. "My dear child, you are incredibly brave. What was done to you was evil, but your survival is proof that God never forgets the innocent." Joy lowered her eyes, emotional. "I thought I was going to die. I thought no one would hear me." The First Lady gently took her hand. "But they did. And now we want to make sure your life changes for the better. The governor and I have agreed. We want to adopt you into our family." Joy's eyes widened. "What?" she whispered. Mrs. Bello continued, "We have no daughter, only sons. But from the moment I saw your face on TV, I felt it in my spirit. You are the daughter I've been waiting for." Kioma smiled through tears. Joy blinked, stunned. You want to take care of me?" "Not just take care," Mrs. Bello said, hugging her. "You will go back to school. You will have your own room, your own bed. You'll never have to beg again. You'll be protected, cherished, and empowered." Tears rolled down Joy's cheeks. She had no words, only sobs of gratitude. 3 days later, a national press conference was held in Abuja. It was broadcast live. The hall was filled with governors, senators, activists, religious leaders, and school children holding signs that read, "We stand with Joy. Protect our daughters. End ritual killings." Joy stepped up to the podium, dressed in a beautiful purple gown, her hair braided neatly. Her voice was soft, but the room fell silent to hear her speak. "My name is Joy. I used to live under Ojuelegba Bridge. I used to believe no one could ever see me." She paused, voice cracking. "But now the whole world is watching. I am standing here, not because I am better than the other girls who disappeared, but because I was lucky to survive." Cameras flashed. She continued, "I want justice for every girl who never came back, for every girl who was promised help but got death instead. I want those in power to stop protecting evil men with money." The hall erupted in applause. Even the president, who sat in the front row, nodded slowly. Joy's words echoed across the country. She was no longer just a victim. She had become a voice, a symbol, a call to action. Meanwhile, in Kenken Maximum Prison, Don Cash sat alone in his cell. He had been sentenced to 30 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. His properties had been seized, his accounts frozen. His friends abandoned him. His wife filed for divorce the day after his confession. Gone were the designer suits. Gone were the private jets, the praise, the envy. He now wore a brown uniform with a number on his chest, just another inmate. But even among prisoners, he was feared. Some whispered, "That's the man who turned girl into yam." Even murderers avoided him. He ate alone, slept alone. And at night, he wept, because no spirit answered his calls anymore. He had broken the covenant. The Queen Mother had withdrawn her favor, and now he was nothing. Outside the prison walls, Nigeria was changing. New bills were being proposed in the National Assembly to criminalize spiritual exploitation and ritual-based fraud. Human rights groups pushed for stiffer penalties. Radio stations invited religious leaders to address the moral decay behind the obsession with quick wealth. But amid all the noise, Joy lived quietly, adjusting to her new life with the Bello family. She now had a soft bed, a closet of clean clothes, a private tutor, but most importantly, she had hope. One evening, she sat at the balcony of the governor's mansion, watching the sunset with Mrs. Bello. "Do you think people will forget?" Joy asked. The woman smiled. "They will forget the noise, but they will never forget your courage." Joy nodded slowly. "I want to help others, someday. Girls like me." "And you will," Mrs. Bello said, "because your life is no longer just your own. It's a testimony, a weapon, a reminder." Joy looked into the sky, the same sky she once watched from under a broken bridge, and whispered, "Thank you, God, for not letting me disappear." 6 months later, Nigeria was not the same. Across states, churches preached against ritual killings. Schools organized forums on street child protection. Media stations aired documentaries about missing girls, corrupt leaders, and spiritual deception masked as wealth. And at the center of this shift was a name that still lingered in headlines, homes, and hearts. Joy, the girl who survived the unthinkable, the girl who was turned into a yam and lived to speak again. The National Unity Hall in Abuja was packed. The president, ministers, governors, and first ladies from every state were seated. Cameras from international networks flashed nonstop. It was the National Heroes Recognition Ceremony, and this year, one award had captured everyone's attention: the Bravery Medal of Light. A tall man in military uniform stepped up to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor not a soldier, not a politician, not a celebrity, but a young girl who turned tragedy into triumph." The crowd stood. Applause thundered. Then, escorted by 2 guards, Joy stepped into the spotlight. She wore a sparkling white gown, her braided hair shining beneath the lights. Her steps were small but steady, strong. Her eyes scanned the room. The same room that once ignored girls like her now stood for her. When she reached the side, the president placed the golden medal around her neck. "I once believed I didn't matter," she said at the microphone. "I was just a girl in the street reading books nobody cared about. But the day evil came for me, I realized something powerful. Even a small voice can shake an empire." The hall erupted with applause again. Behind the scenes, Mrs. Bello wiped tears from her eyes. Sergeant Kioma stood nearby, proud, clapping hard. Meanwhile, in Kenken Maximum Prison, Don Cash sat cross-legged in the prison chapel. He was thinner now, pale, forgotten. The guards barely looked at him anymore. His fellow inmates mocked him behind his back. "Baba Ritual, Yam Master, evil billionaire way fall like leaf." He didn't respond, he didn't argue. His cell was a concrete coffin of regret. Every night he saw the Queen Mother's face, twisted in rage, hissing, "You let her speak, you let them hear." And every time he'd wake up screaming. But today was different. Today was Judgment Day, not from the spirit realm, but the Nigerian justice system. A courtroom had been set up inside the prison to deliver final sentencing for multiple crimes tied to Don Cash. Over the months as his case spread, 7 more families had come forward. 7 missing daughters, 7 untraceable cases, and all linked to Don Cash through digital footprints and evidence found in his secret room. The judge was firm. "I hereby sentence Donald Okafor, also known as Don Cash, to life imprisonment for the kidnapping, attempted murder, and ritual abuse of 8 Nigerian girls, including minor Joy Udo." The courtroom was silent. Then came the final blow. Furthermore, all assets belonging to Mr. Okafor shall be auctioned, and 70% of the proceeds will go toward a national fund to protect and rehabilitate homeless children and victims of abuse. It was done. Don Cash bowed his head. He had built empires, but now he would die nameless, in chains. Across the country, a wave of hope rippled through communities. In Makoko, under the same bridge where Joy once slept, A new shelter had been built, the Joy Udo Foundation Home for Street Girls. Every mattress had her name engraved. Every girl that entered was taught the story of the girl who once lived among them and rose again. Joy often visited. She'd sit with the girls, play games, read stories, not as a celebrity, not as a national symbol, but as someone who understood. Some people try to survive, she once told them, but you were born to shine. Don't let the street define your future. On the evening of December 24th, Joy sat with the Bello family, sipping orange juice by the balcony of the governor's mansion. Christmas lights blinked gently across the compound. Fireworks cracked in the sky. Mrs. Bello touched her shoulder. "How do you feel?" Joy smiled. "Peaceful." "You've made the world listen, Joy. I hope you know that." Joy nodded slowly. "I do, but I'm not done yet." Mrs. Bello raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Joy turned to her. "I want to study law." Mrs. Bello lit up with a smile. "Law?" "Yes," Joy said, "not to get rich, but to fight, to protect girls like me, to make sure no one ever turns a child into silence again." The older woman wiped a tear. "Then that will be our next mission." They clinked their glasses. In the final hours of the year, as 25 approached, the entire nation watched one last viral clip on TV and online. A short documentary titled "The Girl Who Came Back." It ended with these words: "In a world where greed hides behind power, one voice rose from the dust. One girl, once homeless, became hope for millions. Her name was Joy, and she reminded us all that light will always defeat darkness." Moral of the story: evil may hide behind wealth and charm, but no darkness can silence the truth forever. The cries of the innocent will always be heard, and justice, though delayed, will come. True power is not in money or status, but in compassion, integrity, and the courage to stand against evil. Even the most forgotten soul, like a homeless girl, can become a voice that changes a nation. Thank you so much for watching this powerful story. We hope it touched your heart and taught you something valuable. Now it's your turn. What did you learn from this story? Share your thoughts in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. And guess what? A brand new, powerful, and educative story is dropping in just a few days. So make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to watch when it goes live. If this story moved you, please hit the like button and share it with your family and friends. Thank you once again for watching. God bless you.